Do we have the recording going? The recording is going now. So we are live on the recording, and we are now called to order.
Okay, and do we have a quorum?
We do have a quorum. All 5 board members are present. Do I need to do a formal roll call? Okay, so just a quick formal roll call. So Director Houston.
Here.
Director Houston. Director Alvarez.
Here.
Director Gray.
Here.
Director Williams. Here. And that brings us to President Deere.
Here, so we have the entire board present. Very good. Pledge of Allegiance. Greg, would you lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely. Everyone in the room, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay.
All right. Do we have any public comment?
We do have 2 public comments. One from Steve Lessinger, who is here with us in the room, and we will start with him. And then we also have Peter Donaldson, who I believe may be online. It says that he has comments that he would like to be read, and I'll do that reading on his behalf. And if we have anyone online who might be interested in making a public comment, please make yourself known by raising your hand on the platform while we invite Mr. Lessinger to the podium to share his remarks. And you will have 3 minutes. Thank you so much, Stephen. Nice to have you with us today.
Good. This is on. Can you hear me? Hello.
Appearance. Do you want to mute whoever that is? Okay, looks like we got that under control. So Steve, please, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely.
You might recognize me from the past few meetings. I've come to on behalf of a local nonprofit, Pslw Foundation. Again, in brief, we've been in existence for over 20 years, doing what we believe to be good work throughout the district in various communities such as Hawthorne, Gardena, Lennox, Carson, Compton, and the like. We appreciate it. It takes time to develop a relationship, and because we're a volunteer-based agency with no full-time paid staff, we hadn't really reached out to this entity in the past. So appreciate your time and consideration. As I previously mentioned, we have our 21st annual Day at the Beach event. It's coming up next month on September 10th. Though it's based in Manhattan Beach, we really put on this event for our, if you will, more vulnerable youth in our less affluent surrounding South Bay communities. Again, Hawthorne, Gardena, Carson, Compton, what have you. And for today, we wanted to extend an invitation to the board to possibly join us on the 10th, even if it's just for a very short period of time, so you can see for yourself, what we believe to be an incredible and very worthy cause and event. Thank you to Mr. Alvarez today. Now we have a better understanding of how the process works, given the fact that our event is based in Manhattan Beach, but potentially if some of the other board members could come, and you might find it in your heart to agree with us that we are worthy of your attention. And there might be some other ways that we can work together as we, try to form a partnership with you as well. I will follow up with an email to Haza and Julie with more specific information because we're dealing with minors in a public space, though it's a closed event. We ask everybody to pre-register so we can account for everybody. So again, we'll forward that information. And before I run out of time, I just want to thank Haza and Julie for all their attention and graciousness throughout the past 6, 9, 12 months that I've been badgering them, if you will. And thanks to Director Houston for reaching out last week to us directly. And as I already said, thank you to Mr. Alvarez for giving me a little bit of time before the meeting started. And having said that, I'm about to run out of time. I don't know if anybody has any questions or not, but again, mostly came to say thank you and extend an invitation to everybody. So,
Steve, how many children do you plan to have at?
yeah, so we're only going to have 300.
Only.
Because I say that because, again, we've been doing this this is our 21st year. If we could honor all the requests, we'd easily have 1,000.
Wow.
We're just not equipped. I mean, we had one organization, they wanted 200 spots for themselves. So we have 300 children from various nonprofits, you know, like Ridgestone, like Lennox Leap, Gardena Park and Rec Department, and so on. The goal is to have 300 mentors, so one-to-one adoption, as we call it, you know, friendship for the day. And then we have another 100 volunteers manning the different activity booths and serving the food and whatnot, where if you get close to the pier, you'll see us. I mean, we've got a village of tents and booths and so on and so forth. And again, I think it would be worth your time if you could join us. Yeah, 300 kids.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So, and then just whatever it's worth, we already have agreements with the Hawthorne Middle School to put on our SEL programs in 10 classes this year. We have an agreement with the 156th Street School in Gardena to put on our yoga program in 10 classes starting in the fall. And, you know, we've got some other things going on too. Overstay, if you will.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all that you're doing for the community.
No, thank you for having us. We appreciate it. Hope to see you on the 10th.
Thank you, Steve. Okay. So with that, I will move over to Peter Donaldson's remarks that he submitted in writing. So I'll read it as it's been printed. I have to work during this meeting, but if someone could read my comments below. I want to come out and say I do not support the district bill.
Yeah, and I could take more of a high level approach.
Okay. I want to come out and say I do not support the district building a new headquarters. How do you plan to fund this new building? The board recently approved rate increases. And do you support raising our rates again for this project? How much of the investment from the Edward C. Little renovation project will be wasted and become a sunken cost? Also, it doesn't make sense to build a new building if the district is unsure of its future. Could you please reconsider this until later? I wanted to also thank you for looking for new legal counsel. All right, so those are remarks from Peter Donaldson. Now turning to our online platform, I do not see any hands raised. So President Deere, it seems that concludes our public remarks. You might have to unmute him. Okay, Director, President Deere, if you can unmute your microphone. President Deere, unmute your microphone. President Deere. President Deere, if you're able to unmute your microphone. President Deere. President Deere, are you able to unmute your microphone? Okay, Vice President Houston, perhaps you can maybe chair the meeting until we're able to have President Deere rejoin us.
Sure. Yeah. Let's continue really moving on. So go ahead with the next portion, Greg, please?
Okay, so the next portion would be presentations. And we don't have any presentations scheduled, but if it may please the board, I'd like to just share a few quick remarks, and I'll keep it brief, I promise.
Okay, go ahead, Greg. Thank you.
Okay, and so I just want to acknowledge that I've come to learn that the month of August is also designated as Black Business Month. And this was started by John William Templeton in 2004, who co-founded the National Black Business Month as an effort to expand the support and existence of Black-owned businesses across the nation. And in 2019, there were 134,567 such employer businesses with more than one employee in all sectors in the U.S. economy. And that actually was an increase by 8% from the year prior. The White House and the U.S. Small Business Administration had done some analysis of data and had three major findings. People of color, women, and those from rural areas are underrepresented in their share of total federal procurement dollars, even relative to their low rates of ownership in the general economy. Diversity is higher when particular attention is paid to procuring goods from small businesses. Programs like SBA's 8A program, which offers contracting set-asides for small disadvantaged businesses, as well as training and technical assistance, may help explain the greater level of diversity among small business contractors, including among Native American-owned small businesses. Now, I'll just say my wife, Carrie Reed, is a Black business owner for more than 30 years, being a preschool owner and an early childhood educator. And what she takes pride in most and what she highly values is in her ability to make a difference in the lives of young children. And she certainly has a very diverse, multicultural group of children who she cares for. Here at West Basin, we have an opportunity to make a difference for business owners of all historically underrepresented communities within our service area. And we can do so by increasing engagement with our local businesses and increasing access to procurement opportunities. Hello?
This is Don Deere. I'm back.
Okay, fantastic, President Deere. Okay, so with access to our procurement opportunities, such as the improvements we're making to our website and the doing business with West Basin that our directors have recommended. And so as we take advantage going forward with state and federal funding opportunities, greater emphasis is being placed on requirements to expand opportunities to underrepresented communities. And so it gives us a really good opportunity to lean in and maximize by opening the doors of opportunity as widely as we can to the local businesses who traditionally have not enjoyed a seat at the table. So with that, I will conclude my remarks by saying Happy Black Business Month. So I turn the meeting back over to you, President Deere.
All right, what item are we on?
We are on item number 6, items too late to be agendized.
Are they guys?
And I believe we do not have any items that are being recommended. And so that takes us to our consent calendar.
Is there any items that any director wants to send counter items separately?
President Deere, I would like to pull item 7A and 7F.
7A, Desi, the minutes?
The minutes and 7F.
7 what?
7F, district sponsorship request.
Oh, F, okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what item you wanted to pull. Would you repeat it for me, Greg?
Yeah, Director Alvarez asked that we pull item 7A, approval of minutes, and 7F,
Okay.
fiscal year 2022-23 district sponsorship request.
Okay, so let me then ask my colleagues for any other items you want to pull for separate actions. Hearing done, is there a motion to approve the counter items B, C, D, and E?
Yeah, this
So
is
moved.
Houston. I'll make the move or the motion.
And that's Director.
I did it already.
You
Okay,
did
this
it already.
is Houston. I will second.
I did it
Thank
already,
you.
he said. So you got his name now? Okay, is there a second?
I didn't hear who was the move.
Who was the moving member?
Speak up.
I think.
If you were moving.
I thought it was me. I'm in the building.
So President Deere, we're kind of having a little confusion as to who is identified as the moving member.
Yes, I thought the motion was made by, who was it?
It was Williams. Williams.
Director Williams, you made the motion. Okay.
Correct.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
This is,
Speak up, give your name.
Can you
There's a
repeat the
second by
motion,
somebody.
please?
But I can't say
repeat the
name.
Okay, I think we have a motion and a second. So we have, what I've heard is Williams has made a motion and Alvarez has second.
Motion.
Fine.
Can you hear
And the
me?
motion is to adopt consent calendar items B, C, D, and E. Any discussion?
Okay, I'll second it if it hasn't a second.
We got it already. Okay, thank you very much. Please call the roll on consent calendar items B through E.
Yes, sir. So we'll start with Director Alvarez,
Yes,
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Gray,
Yes,
Director Houston,
yes,
and Director Deere, President Deere.
Yes, and those items are approved. We'll now go to consent calendar 7A, approval of the minutes. Is there a question on that one? It's pulled by somebody.
President Deere, I pulled this item and I do have a comment. I'd like to address the minutes of the special board meeting on July 9th. As you know, that was a board meeting that was held on a Saturday. It was, I think, one of the more fruitful workshops slash board of directors meeting that we've had. We had a very long and very frank and honest discussion about quite a few issues on that particular day. And Mr. Togwalder was one member of the public that was there and attended. And I think that we had some very positive comments from him as to the nature of the discussions that day. I think that these minutes are very basic and summarizing the level of discussion. And I would just like to address some of the points that we discussed when we talked about the water recycling program. I think that that was the major topic of our discussion. And there was a lot of good back and forth and a lot of information that was shared amongst all of us. With respect to that, we did look at the long-term ability of the agency to supplement our water supply and to work on a regional basis to develop alternative to imported water and participate in really moving forward with a sustainable local water supply. We discussed the Ed C. Little facility and the ability to produce recycled water there. And we also discussed the ability to connect to MET's proposed regional program where they are going to be developing indirect portable reuse and ultimately direct portable reuse at along with the LA County Sanitation Districts at the Carson Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant. And that project is well underway and has a very good chance and viability of being in service within the next 5 to 7 years. And then working with them, that would be a very viable project to supplement this region's reliance in imported water and reduce it. And I think at the end of the day, we didn't start out there, but I really wanted to emphasize that in our discussions, we looked very favorably to working with Metropolitan Water District and thought that that probably is a more viable alternative than to continue with investments at the Ed C. Little plant. So I want to emphasize that portion of the discussion. We also talked about the fact that the Ed C. Little plant does require an investment, but that we do not have a secure long-term contract for water there. And until such time as one is available, I, for one, want to emphasize that continued investments at that plant do not serve the district well. We also, at the end, and I think it's worth noting, thought that if it becomes an issue as to the viability of the plant, that potentially we move forward recognizing that that investment is something that was in the past, and as we look to the future, we need to be looking at positive actions, and it may be time to consider the sale of the facility. And I, for one, brought up that a potential customer for that would be the city of Los Angeles. And I think that all of those points, and we went into them quite a bit more than I am able to give a short summary of here today, but are worthy of being reflected in the meeting minutes. So with those comments, and I would like to see those comments added on my behalf anyways, I would move the adoption of the minutes for July 9th and July 25th.
Okay, so your motion is to approve the minutes with all the modifications you've expressed. Is that correct?
Well, I just want my comments noted.
Well, you made extensive comments, and the minutes are supposed to reflect what happened at the meeting. If you said those comments at the meeting, they should be included in the minutes. I would agree. You want to make a motion?
I did. I made the motion that we adopt the minutes with my comments noted.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? I'll second that motion and
Second.
allow for discussion.
Can you hear me? Oh.
Director, ready?
Yes, I'm on the phone. I'm sorry. I was seconding it. So, thank you.
Okay. Greg, let's call the roll on the motion as amended.
Will do. Director Alvarez.
Yes.
Director Williams.
Yes.
Director Houston.
Yes.
Director Gray.
Yes.
Director, President Deere.
Yes, and the motion is carried. Well, I'll go to item 7F. Is that correct?
7F is correct.
Okay. Well, by the way, the motion we just passed, including both the minutes of the July 9 and July 25th regular board meeting minutes. Let's go on back to item 7F. And we have two sets of minutes here. Was there a question by anyone? No, Desi, did you have a question?
I think the question is for you on items.
Oh, we're on 7F.
We
I'm
are
sorry.
on the 7F, yes.
I apologize. Yes, I would like, I guess, a discussion of both of those items, so maybe we can have a presentation as to the items, and then I'll make my question.
Okay, so that'll, Pesa, if you're prepared to provide a presentation for the board's consideration. So we'll start with the first item, which is a sponsorship of the Friends of Biona Wetlands.
Good afternoon, President Deere, members of the board, public and staff. So I am here today to present to you on item 7F, which begins on packet page 98. We do have two items for your consideration today. The first is Friends of Biona Wetlands Moonlight on the Marsh. This event is scheduled to be held on Saturday, September 10th, 2022. And at this time, staff is recommending a sponsorship amount of $30,000. If you turn to packet page 101, you'll see here the different sponsorship packets that are, or sponsorship levels, I should say, that are available for this event. Looking at this, the $3,000 would give us one table of 10, as well as a digital ad in their digital tribute journal and branding on their event collateral and website. We have sponsored this event in the past, and based on our historical data, this was sponsored last in the $3,000 amount as well. Do you want me to go on to the next one, or did you want to have a discussion?
We'll go ahead and finish your report and then I'll make my comments.
The next item that we have for your consideration is the 2022 Water Reuse California Annual Conference. This conference is scheduled from Sunday, September 11th through Tuesday, September 13th in San Francisco. West Basin did sponsor this last in the amount of $3,500, and this time around staff is currently recommending a sponsorship in the amount of $3,000. If you turn to packet page, sorry, give me just a second here, packet page 105, you'll see the various sponsorship levels available for this conference. The 3,000 level does offer us one complimentary registration, as well as access to their attendee contact list and other advertisement opportunities throughout these throughout the conference. So at this time, if I read the recommendation, staff recommends that the board consider one, sponsoring the Friends of Biona Wetlands Moonlight on the Marsh event to be held Saturday, September 10, 2022 in the amount of $3,000, and two, sponsoring the 2022 Water Reuse California Annual Conference to be held Sunday through Tuesday, September 11th through the 13th, 2022 in the amount of $3,000. And I can answer any questions you may have.
Okay. President Deere, it's all right, I have some questions.
Go ahead, Daddy.
Okay, on Friends of the Wetlands Moonlight at the Marsh, how do this come to be put on the agenda?
So this is an event that in the past, when we did have the pre-approved list of district sponsorships, it's one that carried over year. This time around, being that we have sponsored in the past, it's my understanding that we were contacted by the organizers with a sponsorship opportunity. And so per the direction that was given back in 2021, July 26, 2021, all the items that are brought to staff for consideration are put on the agenda for board consideration.
So there is a letter that you got from Friends of Biona Wetlands requesting.
I believe it may have come in way of just like an email show with their sponsorship, their generic sponsorship email. But I can double check to see if there was a specific letter that was sent.
Okay, because in the past, don't we usually have these come from different board members recommending support of sponsorships at community events?
Correct. So we do have the community outreach events, and those are the ones that the board will usually, the various board members, yourself and the others will bring any items they would like the board to consider. And then we have these that are our district sponsorships. Some of them may be similar. This is a community event. Others are more like the conference that are more, industry events versus community events, but both have been brought through this venue before.
I know I've only been on the board a short period of time. One of the things is that on community events, it's always been a director that has chosen to sponsor the events as opposed to the industry events.
Correct. I don't know if you wanted to jump in here, Greg. Just this one, like I said, it's been in the pre-approved list in the past, so we followed that process, but I'm not sure if there was any other indication of like board support.
Yeah, I think we probably can ask our colleagues whether there was support for this one.
Well, I'm just asking about the process, and that the process, as my understanding, admittedly, I've only been on the board for a short period of time, but was that in community events, they typically would be sponsored and brought forward by one of the directors, and that event would then be given consideration, and all the directors have access to the community event sponsorship budget. Used to be that budget was segregated so much per director, but now it's just one big pot of money, so. But that was my understanding, so I just wanted to know from the general manager if my understanding was wrong.
Well, I think we have both, right? We have the
Correct.
sponsorship, Steve.
Yeah, if you want some background on this, Director Alvarez, I can provide the background. The administrative code and the code of conduct addresses these issues about public awareness and outreach programs. And it basically divides it into what are called district events, where the district organizes or produce events to promote water conservation, water education, and district programs. And then there are also what we call community outreach events, which are events that are put on by other organizations, but do provide an opportunity for the district to promote conservation, education, and the district programs. So there's kind of two lanes there. But there is a section in the code too that talks about, I think what Hazer was referring to, essentially these pre-budgeted industry events. The code notes that on an annual basis through the budgetary process, the district approves participation and sponsorship in certain water-related events, conferences, and programs. But again, the board has determined that those programs have to bear a direct relationship to the district's operations and activities. And so the district has generated an exhibit that lists all the different approved meetings that are actually approved for per diems. So that's the structure that you have community outreach. And I think that's what you're referring to, Director Alvarez, where you'll often see a director make a request to participate in a local community outreach event. That's distinct from a district event. You know, of course, the water harvest is kind of the classic district event. So it's kind of divided into those two lanes. And frankly, with this direct request coming directly from Biona Friends or Friends of Biona, I'm not sure if it's coming from a certain director or if this is just considered to be an industry event. Because I know it's not a district event because the district isn't hosting it.
No, thank you. So under the community outreach event section of the administrative code of ethics, it does say that community outreach events can be sponsored. It goes on to talk about directors moving forward. One of the items, and I think I've seen it in the past, I don't see it in the packet this time, was the requesting party must complete the district's public outreach expenditure application, and supporting documentation must be obtained from the host or organizer of the community outreach event and submitted to the general manager at the time of the application, but not later than 10 days after the community outreach event. So in the past, arguably I've only been here a short period of time, I've always seen the application completed and included with the background material, and that was not the case this time. So that's what kind of alerted me to the fact that how come this got put on the agenda, kind of at the last minute. And then the other item that I guess this would be directed to you, Mr. Counsel, would be in terms of voting for this, because there are limitations in the code of ethics when it comes to supporting events at the time of the election, where basically restricts the directors from supporting any events during the election period if knowledge of those events comes up. And I think we're actively in the election period right now. We have 3 board members who are up for re-election. So in reading that, I think it puts them in a position that they can sponsor this event, and I'm quite sure that they can participate in the vote for this event.
Yeah, I can address that. As you know, there is what we call a blackout period for directors from requesting participation in these community outreach events. It's found again in the code of conduct. And that blackout period is defined for a certain time period. And that time period is, it begins on the last date by which someone has to file election papers in Los Angeles County, which I believe was sometime last week, perhaps, or some recent time, until the results of that election are certified. So we have that blackout period. And the restriction applies to directors requesting participation or sponsorship in community outreach events. Again, I don't know where this request came from, and I don't know if it came from a certain director, but a director who is in this, we're in this blackout period now, I think, for the 3 offices you identified. And so any of those 3 directors would be prohibited from requesting participation in this event.
Okay. Blackout period started week before that. Week ago.
August 5th.
August 12th.
Was it August 12th?
Is there a motion on this item of,
No,
7?
there's no motion yet. I'm still have questions or comments.
Is that you?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead, Des.
So anyways, it is rather awkward to see the event being recommended for sponsorship without the recommendation coming from any director and without the application completed, when at least for the time period that I've been on the board for community events, we've always had a completed application and we've always had a sponsoring director. So just don't quite understand why this one gets treated a little bit differently than other events.
Just to kind of add to that, Director Alvarez, this one in the past year over year, similar to you, I haven't been here very long. This is my 4th year with the district, and for the 4 years I've been here, this has been under the district sponsorships, that pre-approved district sponsorship list. It hasn't come through, as you're mentioning, with the community outreach events with a director requested sponsorship. So I'm not sure where the change happened, but just to let you know that at least for the last few years, it has come through the route of district sponsorship and not with the community outreach sponsorships that we do get director buy-in from, where it's recommended by a director, as you're mentioning. So this is,
if my memory serves me correctly, this was originally brought to the board by our director, Ed Little, from Culver City. And that was his recommendation that we do this originally.
Okay.
Okay, so Desi, are you making a motion to approve this?
Yeah.
Sorry, Director Gray, is that you?
Are we taking questions, or I'll make a motion to consider
A motion to be made for 7F 1 and 2. Is there a second?
I will second the motion, Director Gray, if as a seconder, I would like to sponsor the Moonlight on the Marsh event at the $1,500 level, which is the Creek Crusader, instead of the $3,000 level, which is the Restoration Advocate. And with respect to the other event, the Water Reuse California, which we have not had a lot of discussion about, I would second that and support that event. But I'm not quite sure that we need to be a silver sponsor. You get, in terms of the logo displayed on the side, the company information and all of those things at the purple sponsor level versus the silver. And that's also a savings, and that would be at $750.
Right, Everett,
Okay,
you said a lot.
you made an amendment and took advantage of that by giving an argument for the amendment. So that's how the motion now reads, 7F 1 and 2 with the amendment by Director Alvarez. Is there any further discussion?
I don't know what we voted.
Let's ask
Director,
the manager to reiterate, our secretary to reiterate what we're voting on.
hello?
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 I'm trying to, Desi made a lot of, Director Alvarez made a lot of comments about the second, but you didn't ask me whether I accepted it because I don't really.
That's
didn't
correct.
hear
That's a
everything
good point.
said.
Director Gray,
So
did
that's
you
a good
accept the
thing.
amendment?
I was.
Director
I
Gray, Director Gray,
But-
this is Desi. I did say if you would accept my comments. I did say that.
No, I wasn't referring to you, Director Alvarez. I was talking about the president. He went on to ask for
Yeah,
questions. I was
the sound
speaking
situation
to
is
the
so terrible
president,
for
not
meeting in
you,
this
Desi.
hospital room. It's like crazy. Started at 3:00 in the morning with a loud TV all night long, and it has
Okay.
stopped making
All
noise ever since. It's hard to hear you, but I believe, Director Gray, you're raising the point that you did not accept the amendment. Have you accepted the amendment or
No.
not now?
No, I have not. Can you let me speak, please?
You have not accepted
Okay, can I
the
speak?
amendment.
Can you
Your
hear?
motion. Is there
Hello?
is there an amendment? Hello, Director Gray,
Hello?
let me finish talking. Hello, let me finish talking. Director Gray has not
I did
accepted the
not.
amendment.
I did not say. I did not say that. I did not say that, Director President Deere. I did not.
Oh, I
I didn't
misunderstood
accept
you. I'm
the
sorry.
amendment.
I apologize. Go right ahead, Director Gray.
No,
Say what you said.
you're talking. I
Go
said
ahead,
I didn't
Director Gray.
hear everything. I did not hear everything that Director Alvarez said about the motion, the amended motion. That's what I said. I want to make sure I understood what he said. I heard that he reduced the sponsorship level of Biona Creek to 15,000, right? 1,500. But the second one, what was your comment about amendment for that one, Director Alvarez?
Director Gray, if you don't mind, maybe we can take them separately. Let's first talk about the Moonlight on the Marsh event and move that at a $1,500 level instead of the $3,000 level.
Yeah, I'll accept that. I think that's a great idea separately. If that's
Okay,
with the
so-
President.
So can we take a vote on that one? We have a,
Okay. Can I have-
President
I do have
Deere,
General Manager, I'm trying to talk. Can you guys hear me? Discussion on the
Yes.
motion, right? Okay, let me make some comments. First of all, there were some comments made about how this particular request came to being. I understood that we have a list of district items or requests that we can approve. I understand it's on the list, so I think that puts the question about how did it come forth, whether it was from a director. President Deere was correct in the past. It was brought forth by Director Little, and I think in the past I have and Director Houston. But we are considering a district request, not a director's request. And I think Director Alvarez brought up the point about 3 board members being in an election. I do not have a challenger, so I'm not in an election. And Steve can speak to that if there's any questions. So I just want to make that clear. This is a district request. My understanding, based on what I heard the attorney say, and it's not a board member request from our community outreach. Thank you.
Okay, let's then call a roll on the motion.
okay, calling the roll on the motion, and I understand it to be sponsoring the Moonlight on the Marsh at $1,500. And we'll start with Director Alvarez,
yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Gray,
Yes.
Director Houston,
Yes.
Director President Deere.
Yes, and the motion passes. Now let's go on to item 7F2. Do we have a motion to approve that? The recommendation.
On that one, Director Gray, I would like to second that motion, but would you accept that we support it at the purple level instead of the silver level?
What is that amount, Director, please?
The purple level is $750. The silver level is $3,000. The difference between the purple level and the silver level is the complimentary registration for one, which I think is less than the $2,250 difference. and the opportunity to sponsor a tier 2 conference event. Opportunity to sponsor a tier 2 conference event, which means that we would have to spend some additional money to do that. Otherwise, you get all of the same logo, advertising, etc., between the purple and silver sponsor level.
When is this? What is the date of the event? May I ask?
The date of the event is September 11th to the 13th. And it's at the Hyatt in San Francisco.
Is this a district request again?
Yes, yes, it is, Director Gray.
All right, well, let me defer to the general manager because water reuse, I think, is very important to think a part of that organization sponsoring it, since recycled water is very important. I was thinking of the $1,500 lever rather than the $750 or the $3,000. So let me ask the general manager what's his perspective on that before I respond to your amendment, Director Alvarez.
Well, I think that it is a very important organization that certainly we have participated in for years. I think that the differences, though, between the silver and the purple seem compelling because we certainly can sponsor at the purple level and purchase an additional ticket if we have others who would like to attend. I am registered to attend. And if we have others who are interested, we can purchase another ticket and provide that level of support while also having additional presence. And so essentially the level of, funds that we provide would be kind of somewhat on par. And so that's kind of where I think that there would be a good idea for us to maybe go with the purple level. Now, you mentioned the bronze level is 2,000, and just in comparing, it seems that the purple and the bronze appear to be equivalent in benefit, and so the difference being the additional 1,250, and so that will be a question of whether we feel that the merits of the organization are such that we would want to provide that additional level of funds. Yet it would not provide any additional, let's say, benefit directly to us.
Well, what was the bottom line, Greg, with what you just said? What do you suggest?
I would say 750 is a good approach, and if we have other members who would like to attend, we can certainly purchase additional tickets and benefit from that direct presence.
And so your amendment includes the ability of any board member or staff who would like to attend could do that. Is that correct,
yes,
Director?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, Director Gray.
Yes, it does. Okay, then I accept the amendment. I accept.
Yes.
Hello.
I have a motion to second.
So we're going to.
Okay, So the motion that is on the floor includes the purple level sponsorship, $750, and the ability to purchase additional tickets for those who may wish to attend. And so we are getting a net savings and the added value of being present to participate in the proceedings.
Okay, if there's no objection, let's
Mr.
call.
Mr. President, Mr. President.
Yes. I just would like to add at the end of this discussion that I support what the staff recommended at the 3,000 level. It's a very important organization. You got a motion on the table in a second, so that's where it's at. But I support what was staff's recommendation. Thank you. You make a good point. Thank you. Anything else?
Director Deere, I just want to make that comment. Yeah, it was important. I agree with Director Houston to support the staff's recommendation. However, I did defer to the general manager, who is our general manager staff, to see what his perspective was on the amendment. So, and I supported the initial recommendation, but if staff is good with the amendment, then I think maybe the board can come together because of that. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we're now prepared to call roll on the motion.
Okay, and so we will start with Director Gray.
Yes.
All right, Director Houston,
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Alvarez,
Yes.
President Deere.
Yes, and the motion passes. We'll now go
All
on to
right,
item 8, the action calendar.
Okay, so the action calendar, item 8, that takes us to our general counsel services. And I'll take this item and discuss this with the board. And so I'll start by saying, and I guess let me direct our attention to packet page 110. And this item comes as a result of the direction that I heard from the board as it came back into session from closed session in our last meeting on July 20, I think it was the 25th. And so in that meeting, it was indicated that the general manager is to issue an RFP soliciting general counsel services. And so since that meeting, I want to first thank our executive manager of finance, Margaret Moja, and her team, Yvonne Lucas, our procurement specialist, and Marianne Rexroad, our manager of finance, who is with us here today in the room. They've done quick work of assembling information, putting together a scope of work, and having a document that's queued up and ready to be advertised for that solicitation. And we did so with the intention of moving as quickly as we can so as not to delay the request or the directive that had been provided last month. And so I'm happy to report that we are, and I'll look at Marianne since she's here in the building, that we are ready to pull the trigger and advertise said RFP if it so pleases this board. And so along with those lines, we also had to decide on what process needed to be conducted in order to move through the evaluation process, ultimately perhaps interviews, and then ultimately a recommendation to our board as to who may be selected to provide those services. And so staff, the Margaret and Marianne and Yvonne reached out to, I believe it was Irvine Ranch Water District, who had recently conducted general counsel services solicitation. And we thought that what they had done seemed to be a pretty, well, I thought it was a cool process. So let me just get that way. And that entailed having a subset of the board convene in an ad hoc to go through the process of reviewing all the proposals that are submitted, recommending a short list to the board. And then once the board approves that, then the ad hoc can proceed with conducting interviews of that short list of candidates, and then ultimately bring the recommended selection forward to the full board. And so without having a bit more definition around the expectations of the board to issue an RFP, I worked with my team, and this was the process that we identified in consultation with, I believe it was Paul Cook, if I'm not mistaken, Marianne? Yeah, who had provided the experience that they had gone through. And so with that, this particular recommendation is to two things: establish an ad hoc committee that will conduct the process that I just described, and to also, in order to expedite the presentation to the board such that we may be able to have a recommendation by September 29th, we would also reduce the period by which we notify non-selects from the standard 7-day notification, calendar day notification, so that we will waive that. And I think what we were planning to do is to have a shorter period notification to the non-selects. And so those are the two elements of this particular board recommendation. But I think that this is a great opportunity for the board to perhaps discuss the process that they would like to see. and maybe ask me a few questions about the approach that I just described, if there's any questions about it.
Mr. President,
Okay, Director Gray?
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reed, for that analysis or perspective on presenting the item. I think that the General Counsel is the only other item that reports directly to the board besides the General Manager. And because of that reason, I think the full board needs to weigh in on selection. I know the majority of the board voted last month to go out for bid to seek others that maybe or anyone who's interested in being the General Counsel for West Basin. I don't think there was any direction that was given to the General Manager in terms of the process or the time frame. I'm not inclined to be expeditious about it. I'm inclined to be thorough and making sure we do what we think is the right thing to do. So my perspective is that the full board should be a part of that process, not a two-person ad hoc, because that's what it would be without and being a public meeting. And I think that we've had in the past, we've interviewed the General Manager in closed session. I believe those candidates were. And so I know there's a process by which we can do that because the General Counsel is a direct report to the board. Thank you.
And this is Board Member Houston. Hello?
Go ahead, Dr. Houston.
Hey, thank you. On this, I concur with what Director Gray said. Legal counsel answers to full board. I don't think an ad hoc is, from my perspective, what we need to do. I'd like to see these RFPs get out there. I'd like to see the full pool of candidates come in, and the board can decide as a collective what we'd like to do from there. But I do not support an ad hoc. So thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
President Deere, I also would like to concur with Director Gray. I think that this process should be a very open process in terms of the issuance of the RFPs, and that should be done as widely as possible. I think that my understanding, and this is a question for staff, is that they will be issuing a RFP with a letter inviting the proposals to a list of firms, and that we've all been presented with a list. I know that I will be adding quite a few more additional firms to that list, and that it will also be posted directly on our website. So all of those things are very positive in terms of transparency and getting the RFP out. I think that as Director Gray pointed out, this is something, this is a position and the only other position that reports directly to the board. So I think that we should all give our say in reviewing the proposals, much like we did through the selection of the general manager process. We're all within our rights to do this in a closed session because as we did with the general manager process. So I don't know why this item is here, but I would not support the item. I think that the process, as it's been outlined, and following the administrative code procedures is adequate, and that there's no reasons why we can't meet and discuss the proposals and discuss who we select in terms of a firm from all of the firms that would be proposing.
So let me understand. We really feel this is a very important position, or positions, that we really want full board input on this matter. And could we not, instead of having an ad hoc committee, just have a subcommittee of the board to handle this issue as the ad hoc was recommended to do so? But it would be the full board at each of these meetings.
And if you need a motion to that, President Deere, to that effect,
Mr. Gray, you're talking, I can't hear you. Please start over.
Yes, if you need a motion, if there's some action needs to be taken that the full board is part of the recruitment process for the general counsel, I can make that motion.
And I'll second that
Okay,
motion.
And it's seconded by whom?
Williams.
Who second?
Just a,
Williams.
Harold
just a
Williams.
point of clarification.
Man from
Yeah,
the.
you know me, don't you?
Okay.
Just a point of clarification. If we don't act on this recommendation, then that is the case. We don't need to make a motion.
Right, just reject the.
If we don't act on the recommendation, that is the case. We just follow the normal procedure. We don't need to make a motion.
All right. well, I
Okay.
will accept that process.
You're making a point that we could follow this pattern as recommended, and we don't need any motion or ad hoc committee to do so. If the rest of the board agrees, that's no problem. We'll just go ahead and do that. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, well,
Okay.
I think I've heard from the board in terms of the need to have a full board participation, and I think I've heard the term normal process. And so what I will do is withdraw this particular recommendation, and perhaps I could work with district council currently to understand the elements of the normal process and use that to establish the final schedule in the RFP and put this out, to bid as soon as we can, once we've made those adjustments. We are going to both advertise it within the Marcel system. We are going to send letters of invitation to the list of potential bidders, and we welcome any additions that any board member may have for that, including Director Alvarez's comment here. And we also will post it on the website, so it's a downloadable PDF that firms can access and individuals can access and download. And once the due date is set, individuals can mail it in and they'll be eligible to compete, provided we receive that bid in our office by 5 p.m. on the day that it closes. They may hand carry it in as well, or they may submit it electronically using the online bidding system through Marcel. So all of those options are conducive to a more inclusive and open process, and that's a good thing.
One last question. When you said submit it electronically, you said using Excel.
I think we discussed this enough. Do we all agree that this is the way to go?
There's no.
Somebody's talking.
Question.
Who is it?
This is board member
a
Houston.
question.
I have a question too. After Director Williams,
Okay.
I have a question. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, my question has to do with the definition of bid. Now, that has a different meaning to me.
Proposals.
Can we define that, please?
Yeah, these are proposals, so it's not a low bidder situation as the classic definition of a bid. So forgive me for using the wrong terminology there.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a request for proposals, and we'll make a selection on the best value basis.
Thank you.
Good point. Anything else?
Board member Houston.
We're already in the second hour of the meeting. Is it okay if we
Hello?
go on action item?
Hello?
I hear you, Houston. Action item 6B.
Well, I had a question or a comment, Mr. President, on this item before we move on.
Okay, before I bring up what I just brought up, I will yield to Director Houston. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the staff how long before this is posted, because in my opinion, we have spent it's been almost a month. And to bring back this recommendation of an ad hoc, which was not what the board asked for, as well as other things have delayed it. The only question is, how quick will this be accomplished to staff?
Greg?
I believe we should be able to have this out within a few days, definitely this week.
Okay, thank you.
So no later than Friday.
Okay, very good. Going on to item.
One last question / clarification.
Go ahead.
When, General Manager, when you said that it can be submitted electronically, you said through the Mercell system. Would you also just submit, can it be submitted electronically via an email submittal?
I would have to defer to our manager of finance on how that might work.
We could add that as a potential way. That's the board's pleasure.
Since they can download it without going through Mercell, they should be able to just submit it
Via email.
via email.
Okay, and that's feasible.
Yes.
Okay,
And every email always has date and time you receive it.
that's right.
So you
Yeah.
know the exact time.
Yeah, as long as it's here by 5 o'clock on the due date. Thank you for that clarification as well. All right, back to the president. Back to the president.
Thank you. I got it back finally.
Okay.
And is there a motion to approve action item 8B?
Well, so with item 8, oh, I'm sorry. This is, okay, I'm sorry, my apologies. So, Steve, I think you normally would.
On AB 361?
Correct.
Sure, this is the resolution that we've adopted in the past that addresses the Assembly Bill 361 that addresses the Brown Act requirements concerning teleconferencing meetings. As you recall, for traditional Brown Act meetings, when you have a teleconference meeting, you have certain requirements. Number one, that you have to have a majority of the board located within the district service area, and that wherever someone is appearing remotely, that has to be noticed. That location has to be noticed and it has to be made available to the public. The legislature suspended those requirements with an adoption of section 54953E, which allows for those particular requirements to be suspended during when there is a proclaimed state of emergency, and there are recommendations concerning social distancing and other recommended measures by, in this case, the county health department. To continue the practice of having these teleconference meetings with the relaxed standards, the district has to make a finding that it has determined by majority vote that as a result of the conditions related to the pandemic and the state of emergency, that meeting in person would present risk to the health and safety of the attendees. So the resolution that's before you is to make that finding, and that would be in place for 30 days until your next board meeting.
Okay, is there a motion to approve? That item?
I'll move the motion. I'll move the item.
Second.
Moved by Director Gray, is there a second?
Second, Williams.
All right, who is it?
Williams, Director.
Oh, Harold Wilson? Harold Williams? Okay, sorry about that.
Division 1.
This is the routine matter, which will probably happen for the next few months, but let's move this meeting along by calling the roll on the motion of 8B.
Okay, we'll start with Director Gray,
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Houston,
No.
and Director Alvarez,
No.
and Director President Deere.
Yes, and the recommendation passes. The action calendar is completed. We're now on agenda item 9, information calendar.
Okay. Thank you, President Deere. And so that takes us to the Donald L. Deere building relocation update. And I'll bring your attention to packet page 116. And this item really is just to give you an update on where we are in the process. As Director Alvarez indicated with the meeting minutes, we had a really great offsite workshop with the board. And one of the items on that workshop was the question of the DOD relocation. And so the question of that relocation was brought forward to allow the board to weigh in on the scope of services for the contracts that we have advertised, and recommendations for award have been brought forward. And those two contracts were for real estate services, principally to help us market and sell the headquarters building here in person, and to possibly look into lease options and purchase options at a different location. And then the second procurement was for architect and engineer services to assist us with evaluating options for utilizing the Edward C. Little facility to situate our headquarters there. And so with that discussion, and it was a pretty robust discussion, the question that came up and the direction that was provided to the general manager was regarding the estimates for square footages needed. And I believe there was a number indicated in the presentation, 26,000 square feet. And there were other estimates that were talked about. And so the question was directed to the general manager as to how much space is needed. I had responses to the effect of, if we had a particular standard for office configurations per title of employment in terms of a job title, then we can kind of compute what the square footages would be. But long story short, the board said, okay, we want you to go figure out what space is absolutely necessary to situate staff, in the new location. The second question was to also look into the validation of the cost estimates and the unit prices that were used for the options that were being presented in the workshop. And so with those two questions, we've taken that back, and I want to thank our executive manager of engineering and operations for bringing on a small task with IDS. I believe IDS was the A&E firm or architectural firm that had provided analysis of remodeling the DLD building. And so they already have familiarity with what our needs were, and has begun the effort of validating the square footage necessary to situate staff, for example, at the Etsy Little facility. We've had an in-progress meeting, and I like the work that they've done so far. We talked as a team about that with IDS and provided additional inputs. And I expect to have the results of their work by, I believe, Barkev, by next week, Thursday, I think it is. Yes. And so once we have that in our hands, we will share that with our board. And I think the board had said that should be given back within 2 months. 2 months will put us at September 9th. And so you certainly will have that information by the 9th. Now, the next step in the process would be for us to reconvene the board and to continue those discussions, that presentation, shaping the scope of those two services, perhaps maybe ruling out some options, so that way the results of the effort is supportive of the decisions that the board needs to make. So that's where we are in the process, and this update is meant to share that with you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? If not, then we will just receive and file the report. We'll go on to item 9B.
Okay, thank you for that, board, and I'll be happy to provide you with those answers as soon as we have them. And so that takes us to item B, which is our hybrid telework policy and recommendations that we're making to establish a permanent policy. We have our manager of human resources, Michelle Green, here to provide a presentation and the recommendation. And here it's an information item because we're trying to obtain feedback on the recommendation. And should we build a consensus today, then Michelle will talk about next steps as a part of the presentation. So with that, I really appreciate Michelle's work on this. She's been developing this discussion over the period of a few meetings now with our Finance and Administration Committee, and her and Elisa Fidelio have done fine work in pulling this together. So with that, Michelle, please.
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, Director Deere and members of the board. Over the past year, if you recall, the Finance Administration Committee has included a standing information calendar item on the agenda that provides updates regarding West Basin's protocols tied to the pandemic and return to office activities. So at the May 18th, 2022 Finance and Administration Committee, the board was advised that staff would be evaluating the implementation of a permanent hybrid teleworking policy. So this item, of course, as Greg has mentioned, is to update you on the process thus far. So as you all, to provide a little background, since the start of the pandemic in March of 2020, West Basin staff has been in an emergency teleworking status. And in July of 2021, staff transitioned to a hybrid schedule approach. And currently, all staff are working a minimum of 2 days per week in the office and 3 days from home when they are not observing their regular 980 FAR day off. So through this process of evaluating this or assessing the viability of a hybrid teleworking policy, the following factors were considered. And that's one, benefits of a hybrid schedule, management practices, staff recruitment and retention, work-life balance, productivity, district culture and morale, and then staff mentoring. So as a part of this research, one of the things that staff did, myself and my staff, Elisa Fidelio, we looked to see if there was any research specific to this issue. And we found a very pertinent and relevant current study that was done in July of 2020 by a professor from Stanford.
July 2022.
I'm sorry, July 2022. I apologize. Thank you, Greg. And this was done by Stanford professor Nick Bloom, and he spoke specifically to, it was a very extensive study, and he spoke specifically to the benefits of working from home and hybrid working for businesses and employees. So some of what he found is that one of the benefits is improved productivity. It addresses employees' preference and reduced staff turnover. And lastly, it could encourage a more diverse workforce. So what his study specifically revealed is that a hybrid work model increases productivity by around 5% compared to traditional fully at work statuses. And the study also revealed that employees reported getting to work in a more quiet space without distractions is also cited as a key benefit. And workers can often concentrate better when they're away from the busy office environment. And Professor Bloom goes on to note that perhaps this is because employees value hybrid work arrangements as a highly, they value a work from home approach as highly as a pay raise, and recognizes that an agency's best talent on board is no longer just about the paycheck. And some additional noteworthy highlights from his research is that organization and consistency are essential for hybrid work model success and structuring the week to ensure that staff are in the office on the same days. As I go over the approach that we're looking to propose, we'll be speaking specific to that issue. Employees still have concerns about the risk posed by COVID-19, and rethinking the office environment to ensure workplace health and safety is something that you as an agency must consider. And there are various technology tools that are designed to support hybrid working models that will continue to evolve and be a key part of hybrid work strategies over the months and years to come. And our IT team here has done an excellent job in terms of keeping abreast and update on technologies pertinent to ensuring that staff have the appropriate equipment and things of that nature to work from home. So I'm going to move to packet page 122, which we presented or prepared for you a PowerPoint that speaks specifically to this issue as well. So as I previously mentioned, packet page 123 speaks to the fact that we have been in an emergency teleworking approach since March 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic began and was mandated under California's stay-at-home order. And moving to packet page 124, some of the summaries of our key proposal policy terms are: number one, that participation is voluntary and subject to various conditions. So if an employee chooses to work in the office 5 days a week, they are more than welcome to do so. The proposal is that employees work 3 days in the office and telework 2 days. And it would be teleworking 1 day, of course, on those days when the employee is observing their 980 Friday off. Next, employees are required to be available and accessible by telephone and or email to their supervisor or manager and other district employees during the teleworking hours. This is already a practice under our emergency teleworking policy. The district will provide basic office supplies, software, and electronic equipment and or other necessary equipment for business purposes only. Again, this is what we've already been doing under our current emergency policy. Employees are to maintain a work environment that is safe and ergonomically appropriate with reliable internet connectivity. Again, this is another practice that we've already been observing under our emergency telework approach. And lastly, one of the things that we had to look at was California Labor Code Section 2802, which said that it may require employers to reimburse costs of internet access to teleworking employees under certain conditions. At the time at which we prepared this packet and it was posted to the agenda, we had not had a legal opinion on this labor code. And so as part of our research, we did do some or made a request to a labor law firm to ask very specifically their thought process on Labor Code 2802 and whether or not it was applicable to West Basin as a public employer. And so one of the things that was found as part of that research is that, and this is by attorneys, that it is unsettled really whether Labor Code 2802 applies to public agency employers. Essentially, generally, provisions of Labor Code apply only to employees in the private sector, unless they are specifically made applicable to public employees. And so what they found is that there is currently no appellate court decisions at this time that have specifically addressed whether public agencies are required to reimburse employees for work-related use of the internet, for example. Now, additionally, Section 2802 requires reimbursement only for necessary expenditures. So on this basis, California Code found no duty to reimburse where a private company allowed employees to participate in a voluntary remote work program, which is what we're proposing here. And the court reasoned that employees had the option to work in the company's office, which would have meant no additional expenses were incurred since the company provided work equipment and supplies in its offices. And we are currently doing that as well as part of our emergency teleworking approach. And we require staff to, for example, if there's any specific equipment that they may need to work from home, we have a checklist that indicates what those items are in the event that the employee, say, for example, resign. And so we have the knowledge of what actually was taken home for use, and those items would have to be returned. Lastly, there are options moving forward from a legal perspective, and that they indicated, or the labor law firm indicated, that because it is unclear whether Section 2802 applies to public employers, the district could take the position that it is not required to reimburse employees for internet usage while working remotely. Now, there's also always risk to not doing so, but because a review of the court may later determine that 2802 does not apply, but it's a very low risk at this point due to the lack of express statutory language applying specifically to public agencies. And so it is our approach that this would not be applicable to West Basin to reimburse staff for internet usage, things of that nature, or other necessary expenditures. Moving on to packet page 125. So here's a summary of management practices that we believe will optimize a teleworking policy approach. Number one, all employees would be required to report in the office on Wednesdays. So basically all hands on deck. And that's usually days as well where we may have certain all hands meetings or staff meetings. Excuse me. We would maintain office coverage and department availability and responsiveness. Productivity management practices and accountability for performance. So each district department manager has their own respective methods of which they track performance and stay connected to their staff. And so some of those practices by our managers here are standing weekly department meetings or staff meetings. Some departments require bi-weekly task sheets. We also, some departments require status reports. Some use Outlook calendar to notate tasks on a daily basis. And other departments may have daily communication via Teams meetings or by phone. And keep in mind that these specific respective approaches may not necessarily be within the policy itself, but as a standard, managers would be required to ensure that they're tracking staff performance on a daily and regular ongoing basis, which they've already been doing over the past several years. So there's also some system programs or softwares such as Teams. There's a feature within the Teams, Microsoft Teams. There's also a system called JVAR and Asana, which are being explored as other means of tracking productivity. And in fact, I think one of our departments have already utilized Asana and found it to be productive. Next, as I previously noted, there are certain considerations that staff had to look at in terms of looking at a hybrid teleworking approach. And if you want, on packet page 27, some of those considerations in terms of benefits for the employee and for the district as a whole are that for under employee benefits, there's flexibility and personal convenience. There is less stress and fewer distractions, reduced cost of commute, increased job satisfaction, and it can be seen as a #1 perk for job seekers. Now, in terms of West Basin benefits, it's a motivated workforce, increased productivity, as Professor Bloom's study showed, flexibility in employee responsiveness. It can attract and retain top candidates. As the manager of human resources here at West Basin, we've already had at least 1 or 2 instances where we have had candidates turn down the position because we could not promise them a hybrid work approach. It can retain top employees, and it's green friendly in terms of commuting, less commuting to and from the office. Of course, there's some risk with anything that you propose, and so it could be employee isolation. There have been studies on staff or individuals who feel more isolated when they're at home. We haven't found that to be the case here at the district, and we as a human resources department continually provide staff with mental health and tasks or techniques on ways to deal with mental health. There's potential abuse of any policy. There could be communication barriers or lack of transparency for some employees, and a diminished interpersonal connectedness. But again, as we indicated earlier, there's various approaches that or management practices that we would be a part of this policy to ensure connectivity amongst staff and employees, other employees and management as a whole. Going to the next page. There are, as I indicated earlier, various considerations, and again, one was staff recruitment and retention. And so what we're finding in a post-pandemic work environment, top candidates do seek flexibility of a hybrid work schedule. Further, West Basin employees have indicated a strong preference for continued flexibility of a hybrid schedule. Work-life balance, I've spoke to that already. Employees report a decrease in stress when they are working according to a hybrid work model, which creates a more content and more content workforce and potential flexibility. Productivity, performance management methods are utilized and will be utilized again in this approach. And we're already utilizing these approaches to ensure that employees remain productive when teleworking. And that includes goal setting and open lines of communication and accountability for performance. And we already have that accountability, you know, amongst staff as we have performance reviews that are done annually and mid-year for staff. And so these are topics and issues that we address already on a regular basis within the district. Consideration, again, for this hybrid teleworking policy approaches the district culture and morale. A return to office fosters interpersonal relationships and employee engagement while maintaining West Basin culture. Facilities better collaboration and removes communication barriers, and it mitigates adverse effects of remote work isolation. Staff mentoring, which managers, especially as a human resources manager, I'm always encouraging managers and executive management, they should, you know, be mentoring their staff. And so this is something that we've been doing on an ongoing basis anyway, and that's whether you're working from home or in the office. So mentoring can help employees stay connected and engage and cope with challenges of daily work responsibilities. And mentoring can help employees maintain awareness of West Basin activities and support for professional growth and development. Throughout this hybrid teleworking approach, or under the emergency teleworking approach, we've consistently stayed connected with staff, and we continue to have all hands meetings virtually. And now we are having all hands meetings in person. So one of the things on package page 130, these are two charts that we retracted from Professor Bloom's study. And so some of the survey results that he found, when employees were asked, what are the top benefits of working from home? As you can see here from this chart, the number one benefit, about 51% said that it was no commute. About 44% said less time getting ready for work. About 41% more time with friends or family because of the lack of commute and being able to get home sooner. There's more flexibility, 36%, a flexible work schedule. And then it was more quiet, about 36%, I'm sorry, there, less noise and distractions. And about 18% said fewer meetings. Now, we meet a lot here at West Basin, so I'm not sure about that one, but that is one of the things that Professor Bloom's study did find. And then when asked whether their employer planned, how many days did an employer plan to work, telework, or have work from home days post-COVID, there was about 27% that said they would rarely do it or never do it. These are employers. About 7% said they would do so 1 day per week, 14% 2 days per week, 13%, about 13.9% 3 days per week, which is what we are proposing, about 10% 4 days per week. And there are some agencies as upwards of 25% that are looking at teleworking or having work from home days post the pandemic 5 days per week. We're not proposing that here. There are some agencies that have considered that. Now, one of the things that we did as part of this research as well is a peer agency survey of whether or not they were considering implementing a permanent hybrid schedule. So in May, we conducted that survey to determine other comparable agency stance on a permanent hybrid schedule approach. So we surveyed 18 agencies. And of the 18, we found that 5 agencies have already implemented a permanent hybrid schedule. There were 4 agencies that said they had no plans to implement a hybrid schedule. We had 1 agency that we found was undecided, and there were 8 non-responsive non-response to the survey itself. Now, some of those agencies that have or are considering implementing a hybrid approach, Metropolitan Water District is one. Their policy is in progress. Walnut Valley Water District, they already have a policy in place. Water Replenishment District, they have a policy as well that is in progress. Santa Margarita Water District, they have a policy in place. And lastly, Western Municipal Water District has a pilot policy currently in place. So again, what our board, the general manager and our staff are asking the board to consider is 3 options. One is which continue under the current emergency teleworking policy approach. 2, require all staff return to the office full time. Or 3, implement a permanent hybrid teleworking policy, which is what the general manager does recommend as the alternative, a potential alternative. So as Greg mentioned, if the board, if the consensus is that the board considers a permanent teleworking approach, some of the next steps would be to present updates to the administrative code for the board, for board consideration at the Finance and Administration Committee and adoption at the full board meeting in September of 2022. We would develop a hybrid teleworking policy enrollment form because again, as I indicated earlier, it would be on a voluntary basis. Train staff on the administrative code updates, and then have the policy implemented itself. Before moving on to questions, just going lastly through the remainder of our board memo. Again, there's true benefits to really looking at whether or not we should consider a permanent approach. As research has shown, a hybrid work approach can improve employee productivity, meet employee needs for flexibility, reduce staff turnover, and potentially encourage a more diverse workforce. Further, continuous West Basin review of proposed permanent hybrid teleworking policy demonstrates sound efforts by management and our executive team to address changes in working conditions, particularly in light of a post-pandemic work environment. There are agencies that are looking at a number of things post-pandemic, whether that's negotiations and how they negotiate with their labor teams, and a host of things that you have to look at a little differently. And so lastly, that I believe concludes my report, and I am more than happy to answer any questions if the board has any.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, we're going to move right along. We still have a long agenda. That we'll receive file.
President Deere, I just, hello? I do have some questions.
Director Gray.
You what, please? Thank you.
Director Gray, you have a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle, for that very long and thorough report. I think you're presenting the recommendation for moving forward with a hybrid model. And my question is right now, what are the number of days that employees are coming in? Is it 2 days a week right now?
Correct, Director Gray. Okay. Staff are currently under our emergency teleworking policy coming in 2 days a week.
Okay. So what is the reason for the 3 days to increase the day? And I assume, let me ask this question, is productivity still at the same level? And so
it
the
is.
Second part of it is, then why 3 days?
Well, let me speak to that, Director Gray.
Yeah.
If I may.
Yes.
Hello?
For me. Yes.
Yes.
Director Deere.
So this is Greg, the general manager, and so I just wanted to maybe provide a response. I believe that having staff come in to the office 1 additional day per week provides us with more opportunity to continue to build the community and culture that West Basin is known for. As I've been here for the short 4 months, I've come to learn a lot about the camaraderie that the district has enjoyed over the years of its existence, and as far as the the team that we have. And so having staff more in the office 1 additional day per week would allow us to continue to have those interactions, to have the kind of mentoring opportunities, so that when you see your colleagues, you can share information and encourage one another, and to maybe move away from what's maybe some of the effects of being more in an isolated environment. So it actually is, you know, a healthy change to have staff present with one another, and then implementing an all hands day so that we actually will see each other together, and you can see your coworkers in other departments, and to share information and continue to build the relationship and the interconnectedness. And then also with management and supervision, to be able to have that interaction in FaceTime, in person, with their team members. And so I think all of those will promote a more healthy culture for our district. I think there's a balance to be struck. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to cut you off because I know we tried. My point is, what I wanted, those are great. I mean, you said basically to build camaraderie and kind of having people come in. So that leads me to the next question. What's the perspective of your employees there? Have they told you this, or this is your perspective, or have you told your employees? Because what I heard Michelle say based on the study, that working at home is almost like having a raise. And so it sounded like people love the idea of working at home, and if the productivity is not affected, and it's almost like a raise to me, people like to, like to work at home. But again, we have a mission to achieve and we have goals. So if the productivity is not affected, and if that's true what you said, it makes sense. But if it's not true, then it's kind of counterproductive to what you're saying. So again, have you asked them what are their perspectives?
Well, I think staff by and large would enjoy, more days teleworking. I think that was strongly indicated in the survey that we provided as a part of the Donald L. Deere relocation survey that the board had asked for. So that certainly is the indication that I've received through that survey.
Well, again, my perspective is, productivity, making sure the business of the district is not challenged. And I think if you're saying that it is not, which I think you have great staff, then I would question or wonder why, the additional data come in. I certainly understand the Wednesday for your all hands meeting, because that is necessary, but I have some problems with trying to understand why they increase. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you for those, Director Gray.
Where are we on our agenda?
I have some I have some comments, President Deere. This is Desi.
I can't hear what you're saying. There's too much noise in this lousy place.
Well, we keep voting to meet remotely. So this meeting is the result of that. With regards to the potential policy, some questions. Managers are required to track productivity, and you referred to a program, I guess, that does that. What was that, or what is that?
So there's three programs that we're looking at right now. One is called JBAR, one is Asana, and another is potentially, I believe it's the city of Culver City that utilizes a feature within the Microsoft Teams software. And so we're looking at those models right now and how those models track productivity. I know that there's one department here that I believe has used Asana in the past or recently that found it to be productive, but I don't know the technical details of those programs, but we're looking at those programs right now. But we've already have managers who are tracking in their own respective ways staff performance.
I'd just be interested, because I'm not familiar with like Hasana, the one you mentioned, or any of those.
Okay.
My interest goes to a lot of what we do is not necessarily widget type work, but creative work. And creative work is best done when you have robust interaction, where you can go back and forth and chat with each other. You can go and concentrate in your office, and then you can go out and discuss ideas with your fellow poll workers. And that's kind of the whole impetus for having the open office model, where there's a lot more facilitation of the direct interaction between individuals. So given that we are primarily, there are some things that are routine, clerical in the nature of the work that's done here. But a lot of the work that's done is more of a creative nature. We're not the ones that are actually out there in the field maintaining anything or anything else. It'd be interesting to see how that's done, because I've always felt, and I know from most of the individuals that I've talked to, they really do miss that personal interaction in terms of just moving forward with projects and ideas, etc. So I would encourage a system that facilitates more personal interaction. We also have a relatively young staff with very few senior managers. So mentoring is very important, and mentoring is best done when you're in person. It's just one of those things where it's conversational, where you talk about things and you set examples, etc. So that would argue for more in-office participation. So I would be more supportive of a program that facilitates more in-office participation in light of really what we do. And then with respect to the district providing supplies and so on, probably everybody has a laptop that they take home, which is all you basically need for at least the kind of work that is done here. So with the respect to the discussion that you provided, Michelle, regarding the reimbursement for the internet access, I would think that would not be something. It would be very hard to track how you reimburse for that, since everyone has internet access anyways. And then what percentage are you using, et cetera, without putting some kind of a tracking device on everybody's computer to know how many minutes of the day they're doing here. And I would not favor that kind of intrusion on somebody's privacy. Given the difficulty, short of really tracking somebody's every minute of work on their computer, I think that the best policy is that really the internet reimbursement is not a practical thing. So I agree. I think your comments basically led to that. I just want to say that I agree to that, and for the additional reasons that I said, the only real way to track it is to track somebody's time, and you have to put either something on their computer that would report back to the district, and that kind of intrusion in privacy is something I've never would favor. My other comments is that we do have to be very careful, about, you identify both benefits and risks. And in terms of, sometimes people work from home and they have dedicated spaces in their homes where they can work from. And if you have a dedicated office where you can basically shut the door and concentrate, etc., that works very well. When there is no dedicated space at home and you have a lot of potential distractions, you also open it up to issues of not only productivity, but abusing the amount of time that's being dedicated to work because of the level of distraction in the environment. Whether it's intended or not, it's unavoidable if you don't have a dedicated office space. So I think I'm looking at the risk that really needs to be considered. And these are all gray areas. But and we're learning our way through it. There's a lot of studies being done. You refer to, I think Professor Bloom, a study that shows 5%, not very large. That's a fairly small amount in productivity. It'd be interesting to see with what type of a workforce. I'm sure it was probably more of a white collar workforce that he was dealing with, but within the white collar workforce, there's different types of work that associated with that. So I'd appreciate a reference or a copy of that study to read. And then with respect to the survey you did of the peer agencies, so we have 4 agencies right now that absolutely said no to the hybrid work. 2 agencies that said yes, 2 agencies that are in the process of looking at it, and 1 that has a pilot program in place. It's kind of interesting that we didn't hear back from agencies that I would have thought, like Callegas and Central Basin. Maybe you can follow up and see where they're at, because I thought Central Basin was back in the office.
Yeah, my understanding is Central Basin doesn't have a building, and so they're virtual at the moment, but they're, in the marketplace to acquire a building.
Okay. Thought there were more. Okay. So it'd just be interesting to know where those other agencies, since they're all local, where they're at. And well, I think that's it. I will quit there.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. All right, well, I think we've lost our board president. He's dropped off the call. So do we have Director Houston still with us? Yeah. So Director Houston as Vice President, would you care to convene the remainder of today's board meeting?
Yeah, this is Director Houston. I can stay on a couple more minutes, and I'm gonna have to drop off. So I don't know who would be next to run the meeting, but that's what I can do. And I have no other comments on this other than what I already said at F&A. So I guess any other directors have any comments on this one? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to the next item. Mr. General Manager, Greg.
Okay, so that takes us to receive and file. So that's item number 10 with the various committee reports that have been provided during the month.
I'll move we accept the receive and file item.
Second.
Okay, I heard a motion and a second. Are there any questions for discussion, anything? Okay, hearing none, let's go ahead and call for the question. Greg.
Okay, so we're voting.
Oh, hold on. Director.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Director
What
Greg.
are we voting on? So sorry, I had to leave the line, but what are we voting on, please?
I believe it's just receive and file, correct?
That's right.
Okay,
It's just receive and file. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and take the vote. Oh, you're welcome. Go ahead, Greg.
Okay, so we'll start with Director Williams.
Yes.
Director Alvarez.
Yes.
Director Gray.
Yes, yes.
Vice President Houston.
Yes. Okay.
President
Next item.
President Deere. And President Deere still not on the line, right? Okay, so that is unanimous for vote of 4. Okay, so that takes us to our next item, which is the General Manager's Activities Report.
Okay.
Okay, so I'd like to start with just saying thank you to our Executive Manager of Finance, Margaret Moshe, who served as Acting General Manager during my vacation of July 26th through August 2nd. And from the reports that she was providing to me on a daily basis, it certainly was a busy period, and she was able to, get things done. And so I really appreciate that, as well as staff who worked with her to accomplish all that was accomplished. I will also be out of the office this week, Thursday and Friday attending the Urban Water Institute in San Diego. And so I've asked Barkev Mazurlian, Executive Manager of Engineering and Operations, to serve as acting general manager during my time away from the office. So Barkev, I thank you for your willingness to do that on my behalf. With that, next item I have here is that this is regarding the internal promotional opportunity for Assistant General Manager. And so on May 23rd, I met with the board in closed session to discuss the opportunity to hire an assistant general manager and obtain feedback. I did receive positive feedback about that. And so the assistant general manager position has been advertised on Monday, August 8th for a 2-week period. And today applications are due. Today's the last day. And so we expect to conduct interviews within the next couple of weeks and then have a selection announcement thereafter. Okay. I think this next item was really a cool item as it relates to the Independent Cities Association conference held on August 13th. And a panel discussion was held entitled Let's Talk Water 2050. And so in this panel discussion, our moderator was our very own Vice President Director Houston. And we had panel members representing Central Basin, Alex Rojas, the General Manager, Water Replenishment District, Assistant General Manager Rob Bestie. Our West Basin was represented by our very own EJ Caldwell, and Upper District, San Gabriel Upper District was represented by their General Manager, Tom Love. And the discussion involved the current stresses that we're seeing on the water supplies, the nexus our water has with sustainable communities, and what we can do to ensure reliability for our region out until 2050. I was not able to attend the conference, which is why EJ was representing the panel there in request to Director Houston. But from what I understand, it was a very engaged audience discussion, and West Basin had a number of its city leaders in attendance. Our very own Director Harold Williams was also in attendance, and perhaps you might be able to share a few remarks as to how engaged that discussion was, and very timely given all that we are seeing with this significant drought. With that, we've already talked about the RFP for General Counsel Services, and we will continue to put the pedal to the metal to get that RFP out on the street as soon as possible, no later than Friday. And I thank staff for helping me accomplish that. I've also met with the Brewer Desalter Ad Hoc Committee, and we've discussed the progress with the demolition work at the desalter itself, which is probably by this time is complete, but it appeared to be nearly complete at the time when we met. And we've also talked about the efforts entailing removal of the water well equipment, the pump and motor, and servicing that so that it can be restored to operable use as a part of the purchase and sale with Water Replenishment District. I've also met with the Los Angeles Ad Hoc Committee where we talked about much of the program development in various areas of our work towards developing a regional water recycling program in partnership with our neighbors, which would include LA Department of Water and Power, LA Sanitation, and the Metropolitan Water District. And we also met a second time during the month to discuss how the handling of the NBR membrane bioreactor pilot study that we are in agreement with the city on, City of Los Angeles. And that agreement has expired as of December 31st last year. And we are in receipt of certain invoices and, how we're going to handle that. Let's see, we also, moving right along, we've also had great opportunities to present before various city councils. And just one in particular, we had a presentation before the city of Lawndale where, and I'm just going to summarize it because our Again, our very own EJ Caldwell was the presenter before the city council, and this was on July 25th. Let's see, West Basin's manager of water policy and resources attended and participated in the city of Rolling Hills council meeting. The presentation was requested by Rolling Hills assistant to the city manager after West Basin conducted outreach regarding the current drought conditions and local response. The presentation provided a general overview of the drought impacts of the state water project, the Colorado River Aqueduct, as well as the detail of Governor Newsom's emergency drought declaration. The council was very engaged, asked questions regarding outdoor irrigation restrictions and the nexus between residential development and water demand. On August 1st, again, our very own EJ Caldwell, manager of water policy and resources development, attended and participated in the city of Lawndale's council meeting. The presentation was requested by Lawndale city staff and was coordinated with Golden State Water Company to ensure that both West Basin and Golden State have a cohesive message related to the current drought conditions and local response. The council asked several great questions and encouraged the city to pursue West Basin's grass replacement rebates. And staff is working both with cities, with both cities to continue to identify potential grass replacement opportunities. So this is really great to continue to advance our water conservation and water use efficiency efforts. The next item I have here is our first general manager project review meeting, which was held on August 5th. And as I had mentioned in previous meetings here in the boardroom, that I would be conducting reviews of our CIP projects to further consider those in terms of the value proposition and the recommendations whether to go forward, and provide an open invitation to up to 2 board members to sit in and ask questions and learn more about these projects. And so on August 5th, we reviewed 2 projects. One was the solids handling project, which is to rehabilitate our filter presses at the Edward C. Little recycled water plant. And the second project was continuing rehabilitation of our filter beds at the facility. So these are the Title 22 gravity filters. And so both projects were presented in a very impressive manner by our staff under the engineering department. Both had presented alternatives, which demonstrated the pros and cons of each, the possible return on investment for each, as well as what the steps necessary would be to carry those projects forward. There were a few questions that I had of staff, and so we're looking at that. And we're going to be able to bring that additional information for my consideration. And then ultimately, I'll be able to provide a decision as to moving those projects along for board consideration in the E&O committee. We also had a tour of the McDonald facility with the operations team, as well as our strategic advisor, who's helping us assess our strategies for the future recycled water program, and in particular looking at how we might utilize the McDonald plant, which is currently being upgraded through the construction project, and how that might fit within the context of perhaps connecting our system to the metropolitan system and bringing advanced treated water into that facility. And that analysis along those lines will continue. We've also convened our joint management committee meeting with the Chevron Refinery on August 16th. And so that was with our engineering and operations executive, our executive manager in finance, as well as our engineering manager and operations manager. And so we met with the parties at Chevron and covered status of projects that have been constructed. And we disclosed some cost overruns that have occurred on the few projects. I believe there were 4 projects that were discussed along those lines, and the concerns as to Chevron's position on those and whether proper notice was provided. And so we agreed to generate documentation that would substantiate the purpose and necessity of those overruns and provide Chevron an opportunity to give us feedback on that. We also looked at the queue of projects that are kind of within the Chevron agreement in terms of capital improvements, and some interesting discussion as to which ones seem to be more ripe for moving forward, which ones maybe not so much, and how we might, evaluate the priorities for that list that is within the agreement. And we also had some interesting discussion about possibilities of additional discharge water recovery that Chevron has to the ocean, and possibilities of feeding that back into the Etsy Little plant as one option in terms of recovering approximately 4,000 to 5,000 gallons per minute of discharges that are leaving the Chevron facility. The next item I have is I attended the 7th annual California Water Data Summit in UC Irvine last week on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, I'm sorry. And West Basin sponsored that event in the amount of $1,000. And it was a really great occasion to hear about the various uses of data, ways to present data in an effective manner, how it helps with decision-making capabilities, especially as it relates to fostering a more innovative work environment. And it was just a really good range of topics. And let me just kind of, highlight some of it. They had panel discussions that covered how to use
Greg.
data.
Greg.
Yes, sir.
Greg.
Yes, sir.
This
Yes, sir.
is Vice President Houston. I'm sorry, but this is a very long report, and so actually, let me ask legal counsel. Is legal counsel there?
Yes.
Okay, so if I have to get off of this call, who runs the meeting if I'm not present?
Secretary.
Okay.
Secretary.
Okay. So here, I literally am going to be off of here in about 1 or 2 more minutes. But Greg, if you have anything else, I hate to interrupt you, but this is a really long report. So is there a way you can expedite it?
Okay, well, I think I could bring it to conclusion right here. I do have a few other items, but let me just go ahead and conclude right there in interest of your time and everyone else's.
Okay, great. I really apologize for that. Board members, are there any questions for the general manager at this time?
Real quick, I know that you have to leave Director Houston, but a suggestion. I think the general manager does a very good job of presenting a report, and most of the report he reads, and it's in writing. I know that it would be probably beneficial and would save us a lot of time if we just get a written report. And I think that would expedite the meetings, and days like today would then be a document that we can refer to back, and also it'd be nice to have it instead of saying, I think he said this, or I think he said that. Since it's all, you're basically reading your report.
Right.
So I would appreciate just receiving a written report.
Okay. And I do have one other item. Thank you for that, Director Alvarez. If it's okay for me to add one last item, Director Houston?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so just real quick, I was also invited to join a delegation of water professionals to travel to Israel at the end of October into the early part of November. And so I want to share that as what I think would be a great opportunity to learn about the water management practices in Israel, and to join the EPA, Water Reuse Association, and other peer agency representatives on that trip. And so I am sharing that now to receive feedback to inform my decision on that invitation. And so if there's any feedback that the board would like to provide, I welcome that feedback.
Okay, let me go ahead and pick up from there really quick. So I concur with what Director Alvarez said. I think that a written report is excellent, although I still want our general manager, of course, to give a summary at these meetings for those who don't see that report. But yes, something in writing is great with the details. Number two, well, first of all, by the way, I do want to say thank you to the general manager, Greg Reed, for helping coordinate and facilitate the ICA panel. He did a great job of putting these folks together on behalf of West Basin and myself as the moderator of the panel. It went really well, and I know Director Williams may want to say something about that also, but I really have to extend my gratitude to Greg for this. So Greg, I know I'm rushing that meeting a little bit right now, but please know that I greatly appreciate the work you put into it. EJ did a wonderful job. We had a great panel and lots of dialogue. I think we got like an hour and 20 minutes or something like that for this panel, which was amazing. That's way more than most people ever get at a conference. And so with that, regarding the Israeli trip, I think that's something that the board needs to, of course, talk about, but I'm supportive of looking at that invite, but we can figure out how to agendize or make that a protocol separately. So with that, are there any questions from my colleagues at this time or other comments for the general manager's report?
This is Director Gray. Thank you.
Sure, Director Gray, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you very much. Thank you, General Manager, for your very thorough report. But I suggest you submit it to us in writing because it can be very lengthy. And I suggest when you present that you present just the highlights and refer to your report for us to read for more detail. Just reference in terms of the workshop that Director Houston, I think, facilitated or moderated, and I don't know if Chair Manager was on it, but I heard it was a great workshop because I know the subject matter is very timely and certainly needs to be discussed. So I applaud everyone who was involved, especially from our district. The Israel trip, I think, is something that the board should consider approving for the general manager because I think that he can learn from what others do internationally, which can be helpful to us. So at whatever point we need to discuss it, if that's what we do as a protocol or whatever the vice chair just suggested. But I do think that is an opportunity for him to interact with others who have some of the same issues that we may have. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Gray. Any other comments or questions from board members on general manager's report? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move on to the next item, which I believe is General Counsel's report, unless I'm wrong.
That is correct, Director. So we'll turn it over to Steve O'Neill.
Thank you, Director Houston. A couple of things. I got word this morning that the legal matters list was supposed to go out over the weekend, and evidently my assistant had some transmission problems, so I'll attempt to resolve that tonight. But in the absence of that written report, I'll just volunteer a couple of observations and summaries of the activities we've been involved in since the last meeting. I've spent a fair amount of time working with staff and the general manager and Chris Helm Consulting concerning the district's recycled water contracts, including a meeting with the Torrance Refinery, which we found an in-person meeting, which we found productive. We've been engaged in a lot of negotiations and discussions with them last November concerning recycled water agreements, but they have had significant turnover, new plant manager, new council, and other new faces there. So we found that to be a productive meeting and look forward to moving that whole project forward. Also have met with staff and the same team on other matters concerning LADWP, Marathon, and the PV project. Also on the administrative front, working with Margaret on some proposed amendments for the administrative code, and on the litigation front, you may have noticed we finalized the summaries of testimony in the San Diego versus Med case. One update on that is that the closing argument has now been continued until September 27th, expecting a ruling perhaps from the trial court in mid to late October. Again, the key issue on that whole matter is the issue of offsetting benefits and whether or not the 2003 exchange agreement was in fact a willing agreement or an exchange agreement. On another litigation matter, on the Port litigation, we've completed all the final conditions and administrative cleanup concerning that case, so that is now closed. One of the last conditions concerned a plaque from Mr. Porter, and we also closed out a situation with the data management firm that was involved in that. So I know we're pressed for time, so I will stop there and of course entertain any questions.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any questions from the board members? Okay, thank you. And Steve, obviously, when you have the chance, you'll send us the written report.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, Greg, what's the next item, please?
The next item is AB 1234 reporting compliance.
Okay, excellent. So I will submit mine in writing this month. Colleagues, anybody have an AB 1234 report?
I'll be submitting in writing.
Okay. Anybody else at this time?
If I have anything to report, I'll submit it in writing. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next item, Mr. General Manager.
Yeah, closed session. No closed session items. That brings us to director's comments. Future agenda items.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll open up the floor. Any next agenda items or general comments from board members?
Comment.
Director Gray would like to say thank you to the staff and general
Sure, go ahead.
board members. Thank you for all your reports this morning.
Okay, perfect. And I heard Director Williams had nothing, right?
No, I have something.
Oh, you do? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay, the comments that were made concerning the ICA conference they were great. It was a great conference. The program that you moderated was great. Great comments and input from the audience. I have a problem, and that is that the West Basin director, who was me, and a staff member who was there representing us, Julie Raver, we weren't recognized. And I think that whenever we are West Basin staff and directors are at an event like that, and one of our directors is at the mic, has control of the mic, you must, I mean, it's just common courtesy to recognize your fellow directors and staff members. And I just hope we don't do that again, that we be recognized. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Director Williams. And so noted, my sincere apologies that you are correct. You weren't recognized, and I don't think Julie was recognized in the midst of getting things going. And as you know, sometimes that does happen. And my sincere apologies. I'll make sure that we do that going forward, including putting it up front of my notes. And I've sadly had that happen at times before. But yes, you are 100% accurate. So I do apologize for that. Any other director comments? Director Alvarez?
I have one comment, and this has to do with the upcoming shutdown by Metropolitan and the request for people not to water for the 2-week period beginning September 6th. I know that there's been coverage in the local press. The LA Times did a very nice article, showed a nice map and so on. However, you'd be surprised at how few people know they're not supposed to do any outdoor watering for 2 weeks. The retail agencies, including the city of Manhattan Beach, are not doing a very good job or a job at all in advising people as to the need to stop all outdoor watering for that 2-week period. So I would like to make sure that West Basin is working with the retail agencies in getting the word out. Golden State Water has not sent out a letter to their customers that you wouldn't, that's more than a 6 month that you can't read. And as I said, I live in Manhattan Beach. I haven't seen anything about the need to stop outdoor watering for that 2-week period. And that's going to be a very critical period, because I think if we collect that data, it will really show, and people actually stop outdoor watering, we would have a good data. It's one small data point, but it would be one good data point as to the amount of water that's used for outdoor use versus indoor water use. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Very good.
Okay, great. Thank you, Director Alvarez. And just in closing on that note, I'll say similarly, I've heard folks in my communities, even in El Segundo just this past week, who are very aware of what's going on, but have told me they have not seen a lot of information, both from the city as well as other channels, if you will. So they have brought that to my attention. And I know our staff will be working on that, but I would reiterate that point that we need to make sure that all of our communities understand what needs to happen beginning the day after Labor Day. So I'm sure that'll be a big topic of discussion at our PI committee meeting, but I will note that with staff. Other than that, I really have no extra comments. I want to thank everyone for the reports today. The board certainly gave the feedback, and I hope that we can accomplish our work going forward. I know it's a little bit tricky with some of the schedules of directors at this time, but anyways, with all that, I have nothing further to add. So thanks to everybody involved, and this meeting is adjourned.
All right, thank you.